Well, without further ado, we can go ahead and get started. And if anything starts acting wonky, just let me know. Leave me a comment down below. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Alrighty. So today's training, we're going to be talking about overcoming food cravings. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. This is something that I talk about with our clients all the time. This is one of my favorite things to help people work through and master because as we will learn, food cravings have a different meaning to them. It is our body trying to tell us something. So I'm excited to dive in and help you guys learn more about what food cravings say and what our bodies are trying to tell us deep down. All right, so first, if you're new here, welcome. We've had several few members over the last few weeks, so if you're new, super excited and happy to have you with us. My name is Megan Ryan. I am a registered dietitian, and usually I am joined by my husband and business partner, Patrick. Together, we have over 20 years of experience in the health and fitness industry. And like I was mentioning earlier, we are super passionate about helping people break free from the cycle of inconsistency. Because we know we survey everybody who comes into this group, and we know that that is the number one thing holding back almost everybody in this group. I think the last time we surveyed, it was around 83% of you guys mentioned that consistency was the number one issue. So we like to do trainings around all the topics that can lead to inconsistency so that you can have a to help you establish a more robust foundation, which is, often overlooked by the mainstream fitness industry. So our shared passion revolves around supporting you in cultivating a healthy relationship with food, exercise, and your body. And what we ask of you during these trainings is that we encourage each of you to actively participate, okay? So that means asking questions, leaving comments, and just sharing your experiences throughout, right? Because it's very easy for us to feel like we're the only ones in the universe dealing with a certain problem. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, as well as other members in our group, from them participating, we all have similar problems. It's just a matter of talking about them. And Patrick likes to use the quote that the only problems we're unable to solve are the ones that we are unwilling to talk about. And that is absolutely true when we go through these trainings. So if food cravings are something that have plagued you for a really long time, like, let's talk about it, right? Like, get into the comments and let us know what's going on for you, because this is a channel of support for you. So that's how we ask you to participate in these trainings. All right, so this is a part 2 to what we covered last month, which covered more about were you addicted to food, or are you addicted to food? Because I see this time and time again come up with people saying, I'm just addicted to food. I love food, so that's why I can't lose weight, or I love food, that's why I can't get healthy. And so in the last training, we dove deep into the neuroscience, we'll say, like the brain science around why you feel that way, right? So if you haven't watched that one, definitely go watch that one next, or in another time when you carve out some time to watch more of our trainings. It was super fun to do, really interesting. We got really good feedback around it. And I guarantee it'll be a new way to think about that topic for you. So you don't need to watch that one to understand what's going on in this one, but they do complement each other well. So I highly recommend watching that one as well. All right, so first things first, what are food cravings? I always think it's important to define anything we're trying to learn more about, and viewing it as a problem to solve. It's always important to start with, okay, like, what is it, right? So if you're watching this live, or if you're watching this as a replay, I want you to leave a comment and let me know what you think the definition of a food craving is. And then we'll go into the next slide and I'll give you the answer. But if you're watching live, please leave a comment. And like I said earlier, this is your chance to participate and get some support around what you think food cravings are. So I'll give you guys a few minutes to do that because I see there's a couple of people that have just joined. And if you have just joined, hey, how are you? Hope you're doing well. It is just me tonight, by the way. Patrick is out doing work stuff, so it's just me. All right, so I will go ahead and move on. But if you are watching this as a replay, I highly suggest dropping a comment, letting everyone know what you think food cravings are, letting us know what food cravings are, and we will move on to the answer. So food cravings are intense desire for specific foods. So meaning fries, ice cream, chips, right? And why I highlighted specific foods is because usually don't have a craving for broccoli, right? We usually don't have a craving for bland chicken breast. It's usually these hyper palatable foods that we feel like we're craving the most, and there is a reason for that. And also the relationship we have to those foods, that's kind of something we talked about in the previous training. So if you want to dive into more of that, highly recommend watching the other one. If you want to know more about like why we feel so drawn to those foods from a neurological standpoint. Today, we're going to be talking more about nutrition and like nutrients that maybe we're missing in our diet. So I also like to define food cravings as something that impacts our daily life, right? Like if something is disrupting our focus and our productivity, it's affecting our mood, we become frustrated and irritable, and then it leads to unhealthy eating patterns and potential weight gain, right? Like over and over again, I've heard people say, oh my gosh, I just have all these intense cravings. Like there's something wrong with me. That's why I can't lose weight because I just have all these cravings all the time. That is something that's impacting your daily life, right? And that's something that warrants further attention. So just like to broaden, the definition here and thinking about why or how food cravings are impacting us day to day, because hopefully that motivates you to look at things a little bit more closely so we can start to figure out a solution for this. All right, so first things first. Food cravings are not random, okay? I know it can kind of feel like sometimes like, oh my gosh, this just happens to me. Like I'm just someone who gets food cravings, right? And then it can just be this, because they can be so overwhelming and we can feel like something's wrong with us, that we just kind of play it off as like, oh, I'm just like that, right? Like I'm just the type of person that gets food cravings all the time. That's not a normal state of being, okay? And I'm not saying that to be mean, it's just true. That just means that like we have to dive deeper into maybe there's some nutritional imbalances and we'll get into those in a few minutes. But having consistent food cravings is not a normal state of being and they're not random. It's our bodies trying to tell us that it needs something. So the key here is to tune into and learn and develop the skill of how to tune into what those food cravings are actually telling you. So we'll get into that here in a minute. But if you are watching the replay, I want you to leave a comment down below and let us know. Are you someone that in the past has just said, like, we're just throwing our hands up, like, oh, this is just something I'm going to deal with forever. Let us know in the comments if that's something that you feel like that you have either said before or maybe you've heard someone else say. All right. So, like I mentioned, food cravings are not a normal state of being. And to get to the root cause of what the food cravings are telling you, I like to do what's called a root cause analysis. And what that means is that we take a look at the cause and effect relationship. So I always like to look at food cravings as the effect. So what is causing that effect within our bodies, right? So why do we crave certain foods over others, right? We talked about that. Why are we craving those hyperpalatable foods over, say, the healthier options or even the more bland options too, right? And then what do these cravings mean? So it's just getting curious about your body, getting curious about what these cravings mean and what maybe we can do about them. So that's what I like to say is we're going to do a root cause analysis, and I'll walk you guys through that here in a sec. All right, so we'll start with sugar and carb cravings because I know this is one of the biggest ones for a lot of people. So drop a comment if you're watching this now or as a replay, if you are someone who deals with sugar or carbohydrate cravings, and this is like your vice, and you feel like at the end of the day, this is just your go-to. This is, this is the one thing that's holding you back from, let's say, losing weight and getting healthy, is you're having intense sugar cravings, right? And those intense desire for specific foods in this case, sugar. Let us know in the comments if that's you. All right, so what this actually means, if we're gonna look at it at the root cause analysis, right? So if the effect is the sugar craving, what is causing that? And a lot of times it's actually an imbalance in your blood sugar, right? So here is a graph that shows a glucose or blood sugar spike, and another, that's the orange, like pink line there. And then the blue line shows a healthy glucose response. And the main difference between these two is this pink line is someone eating, let's say, some chips or even a piece of fruit, or let's say some candy, or any kind of carb just by itself, right? Just eating a carbohydrate food just on its own, that's going to cause that really sharp glucose or blood sugar spike, and that really very tall blood sugar crash, okay? And if you notice, there's a short amount of time between that happening. We're peaking and then we're crashing really fast. And what happens when we crash is that's where we get those cravings. That's where we start to get hungry, okay? And the goal with balancing out our blood sugar is to, on this blue line, have it expand. It's not as sharp of a spike, and it's lasting a little bit longer. So you're going longer bouts of time without feeling hungry and hopefully not having any cravings. And so how we go from the pink line to the blue line is by not eating carbohydrate foods in isolation, okay? When we eat carbohydrate foods in isolation, that's what happens. So we have to pair it with non-starchy vegetables, fiber, protein. We have to start eating balanced meals, okay? So that's why I have this question here. How is your eating? So if you're experiencing insane sugar cravings, I want you to ask yourself, how is my eating on a day-to-day basis? Am I just constantly snacking throughout the day? And am I snacking on mostly carbohydrate foods, chips, cookies, little things throughout the day, crackers, right? And I'm not actually eating a full balanced meal throughout the day. And then, so ask yourself that question, how is my eating, right? Because I guarantee you, if you feel those intense cravings, this is at least part of it, okay? So if you have, hopefully everyone is tracking. I haven't had anybody comment yet, but if you're not tracking, let me know in the comments. But yeah, always ask yourself, how is my eating? And understanding that whenever our blood glucose goes up and then dips really quickly, we're going to be really hungry, and we're also going to have those really intense sugar cravings because our body is always trying to balance out our blood sugar levels. So if we're dropping really fast, that signals our body to say, hey, we need more of that. We need more blood sugar to help sustain our energy levels throughout the day. So by implementing a balanced meal, that's going to sustain you. It's going to keep you fuller for longer. It's also going to slow down your digestion. So it's going to give you that smaller glucose response, a healthier glucose response over time as well. The second thing with sugar and carbohydrate cravings is your sleep, okay? So the second question I want you to ask yourself if you're dealing with these types of cravings is, how is my sleep? This graph looks really intimidating, but I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to explain it to you. It's pretty simple. So we have two hormones that regulate our appetite, our hunger, and our fullness, okay? So leptin is what helps regulate our fullness cues. Ghrelin is what helps regulate our hunger cues. And so this graph was actually done in a study where in just 2 days of sleep deprivation, we can see that our leptin levels decreased, meaning we're not going to feel as full as we would if we got enough sleep, meaning we're going to overeat. And then it also showed that our ghrelin levels were increased, meaning that our hunger was going to go up, also reinforcing the pattern of overeating. So sleep is so, so, so important. And on the right, it can show, obviously, our hunger is going up, right? And then our global appetite, again, with ghrelin, it's higher, right? Meaning we're hungrier, and then we're also not feeling as full from the food that we do eat. And that's just from 2 days of sleep deprivation. So imagine if you're chronically sleep deprived, we don't have good sleep hygiene, right? Like that can really impact what our body is how it's functioning on a day-to-day basis. And this is also true for sugar and carb cravings, because if we're not feeling full, right, and we just keep eating, we're going to have higher glucose spikes and faster crashes, right? And then also, when we are tired, our brain is working on overdrive, and our brain prefers carbs as fuel, glucose as fuel. And so you're going to want to be munchy more. Like, leave a comment if you've ever noticed yourself when you're sleep deprived, if you're actually like, you want to snack more. I definitely noticed that myself. I know Patrick does too. But yeah, leave a comment. Like, what do you notice in your body when you don't sleep well, right? And when we talk about what I mentioned before in that root cause analysis, is asking yourself these questions and actually giving yourself the space to tune into what your body is feeling like when you don't sleep well, right? Like, I can sit here with these graphs and tell you logically like what's going on in your body, but that may not be as impactful as you actually taking the time to slow down and listen to your body. And actually pay attention to those signals that it's giving you, because it's going to tell you when it's out of whack and out of alignment. Again, we just have to refine that skill set of tuning in. So leave a comment if this is tracking. Let me know if you're watching it now or as a replay. Would love to hear your thoughts on how your eating is and how your sleep is, and if you notice a correlation between those two things and your sugar cravings. All right, next up on the chopping block is salt cravings. Now, I'm definitely a salty foods gal, okay? So this one is definitely hits home for me. But again, if we're craving salty foods, there is a reason. We have to dive a little bit deeper than just saying, I'm someone who craves salt, right? There is a reason for it. So with salt cravings, I want you to ask yourself, how is your hydration? Okay. Salt is, or sodium specifically, is an essential nutrient that we need, and it helps with our fluid balance, and it helps with our hydration. It helps with our nerves and muscle contractions. It has a lot of amazing benefits in the body, right? So whenever we are dehydrated, say you went for a long hike, you went for a bike, or say you just worked out. Like Patrick and I live in Albuquerque, so anyone who lives in New Mexico or somewhere there that is higher in elevation, we are actually more prone to becoming dehydrated faster because we are at higher elevation. Excuse me. So that's something we really have to pay attention to. So if you're increasing your activity level and you notice you're craving salty foods all of a sudden, that might be a sign that, hey, I need to actually have more salt in my diet because I'm sweating a lot. I'm losing a lot of sodium when I'm working out, right? And if this is not the case, this is also salt cravings. Sleep is another big one with that too. I just didn't want to hammer the same point home, but it also plays a role in our salt cravings as well. But hydration is the main one that I see a lot of the times is when we're craving salt. It's because we just need more fluid. So some of the signs of dehydration, right? Your mouth is getting dry, you're thirsty, maybe you're really tired. I see that one a lot. Like, think about when you wake up in the morning. This is something Patrick and I have just realized. Think about when you wake up in the morning. Do you wake up like dead, like so tired, and then makes it really challenging to get out of bed in the morning? Sometimes that's not an indicator that you're not getting enough sleep. Sometimes it's an indicator that you're dehydrated. We haven't been drinking any water for 6 to 8 hours, right? Like, we've been fasting while we're asleep, and usually when we wake up, we're dehydrated. So that can make us feel really fatigued. So if that sounds like you, pay attention to your urine in the morning? Is it dark? Is it super dark? If that's the case, then definitely make sure you're getting in some water and making sure you're staying hydrated. So fatigue is a big one that I feel like gets overlooked as a sign of dehydration, because we can just easily just throw that to the side and be like, oh, I'm just tired, right? I didn't sleep well. I was like, no, I think maybe we can be a little dehydrated sometimes. Also, brain fog is another one that I think gets overlooked with dehydration. This one happens to me a lot. Like, it can be really hard. Like, we think about sodium, right? And it plays a big role in our nerves and our nervous system. So if we start to get brain fog, brain fatigue, I think it makes sense that maybe we're just a little bit dehydrated. Headaches too. I think that makes sense. Our muscles contract when we're dehydrated, so we can start to cramp and have headaches there too. So these are all just some things to think about as far as why maybe you're having those salt cravings, and action items for you to take a look at and see if they work for you. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, this can all make sense logically, but until you implement it in your life and pay attention to what your body is saying, it's going to be hard to know if any of these are applicable to you, right? But leave a comment below and let me know if any of this is hitting home for you. If you're watching this now or as a replay, definitely let me know. Let us know. Let everybody else know. Like, is this something you feel like you struggle with? Is this something you haven't even considered before? Super curious to know how this affects you guys. All right. Yeah, and like we mentioned, people at risk, most at risk for dehydration is anyone who plays a sport, but that doesn't have to mean just like athletic sports. It could just be recreationally, hiking, biking, even going on walks during the summer months, right? Like, it's definitely getting warmer here in Albuquerque. If you're pregnant, also your environment, if you live somewhere that's super humid, if you live somewhere that's higher in elevation, like we mentioned, and then also if you're sick, because when we are sick, our body is working really hard, and that's why the doctor always tells us, hey, we need more fluids, right? Same thing for salt, because it plays a role in our hydration. All right, and this last one is probably my favorite to talk about, because yes, sugar and salt cravings are the most prevalent, but let's say that you're watching this training and you're like, Megan, I do all the right things. I'm staying hydrated, I'm eating well, but I'm still having all of these, I'm sleeping well, but I'm still having all of these intense cravings. So what's up? What's going on? So that is something that is actually called a diet-induced craving. Now, I want to be clear here. Diet-induced cravings means that you're doing all the things, and maybe you're actually we'll say that you're on a diet, okay? Like, you're trying to actively lose weight, or you are on a journey of eating healthier and it is restrictive in some way. But especially if you are quote unquote dieting, okay? If you're on a weight loss journey, this is very prevalent. And those types of cravings, like, yes, they can be nutritionally based, like we talked about, but if that's not checking any of the boxes, then it's time for us to look at these types of cravings as well. So, a hard truth about dieting is that it is one of the most common forms of disordered eating. And I hate to say that. I know it's not fun to talk about, but it's true, okay? So disordered eating sits on a spectrum of normal eating and an eating disorder, and may include symptoms and behaviors of eating disorders, but at a lesser frequency or lower level of severity. So this could look like irregular or inflexible eating patterns, fasting, binge eating, skipping meals, avoiding a type of food or food group, all in the name of dieting and trying to lose weight. And on the right here, there is this diet/restricts binge kind of cycle that's going on, and that is very prevalent with dieting, and why this is so important when we talk about food cravings. So kind of the journey here is with dieting is that we'll start the diet, right? We'll do a complete 180 in our lifestyle, right? and it's some form of restriction in some way, right? Like the common thought is I have to make all of these sacrifices for me to lose weight. So that's where we start at, is in this blue circle up here. And then what that actually is deprivation physically and psychologically. So not only are we experiencing maybe sugar and salt cravings because we are physically depriving our bodies, right, like we talked about, but we are also psychologically depriving ourselves, let's say, of our favorite foods, like those chocolate chip cookies are off the table while I'm dieting, right? Like these are all common scenarios that we hear time and time again. But what that's doing is depriving you psychologically, and that is setting you up to break the diet rules that you have put on yourself in the name of losing weight. And then we end up overeating or binging on said forbidden food item, right? And then here come the feelings of shame and guilt and confused about how to eat, because this can't be happening to everyone, right? Like, well, how can everybody stay healthy? But I'm over here still craving these foods. And then it just reinforces being unhappy with ourselves and being unhappy with our weight and what we look like. And then we start the diet all over again. So this is the common thread here. So what I really want to focus on with these types of cravings is that they happen here because we're depriving ourselves, right? It's a lot like we talked about with those sugar cravings when we're not eating balanced meals and we're just eating, heavy carbohydrate foods. We're going to have that high spike and that fast crash. Same thing with our psychology, right? Like we're restricting any kind of forbidden foods or any foods that we've labeled as bad. And then psychologically, we're going to have a crash. And we're like, oh my gosh, I just want to eat this food. Like we start to think about it all the time. And then we break our diet rules. And then we just keep on this loop over and over and over again. Hopefully this is tracking. Everybody let me know. A couple people have joined. Please leave a comment if you're here. Would love to hear from you. All right, so back to the root cause analysis, right? Give me just a second. I'm going to turn on the light really quick. My overhead light is out right now, so we're having to do with what we have. So if we go back to the root cause analysis that I like to do and viewing the food craving as the effect and trying to figure out the cause, and we start to look at, like I said, the cravings as the symptoms, we can ask the right question to find the solution. So sugar cravings, are you eating balanced meals to support healthy blood sugar levels? Are you getting enough sleep? Salt cravings, are you drinking enough water? And then for dieting, like, are you in that dieting mindset? Are you setting yourself up to stay on that binge restrict cycle, that dieting cycle that I just showed in the previous slide? So these are all looking at and not ignoring our bodies, right? We're viewing them as symptoms so we can ask, okay, why is this happening for me? Instead of just dismissing them and staying in this cycle of confusion. All right, so, I didn't mean to do that. Does anyone have any questions? This is my last slide. I know I went through a lot in a short amount of time, but if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Let me know what was helpful, what was interesting. Your feedback is what informs these trainings. So the more that you guys let us know how this helps, how it doesn't help, that can only help inform things that we do in the future. So definitely let me know what you think, if you're watching this now or as a replay. Would love to hear from you guys and to know what you think. And again, leaving comments, interacting. Patrick and I will be in here after the fact and commenting with you guys and interacting if you want some help with anything or some feedback on anything. Excuse me. But like I said, we'd love to hear from you guys and have any interaction if you feel comfortable. So the next live training, so mark your calendars, it's going to be July 8th on 2024 at 5:30 at the same time. So definitely mark your calendars. We'll definitely remind everyone of the next training. And if this training was helpful to you and this is something you're looking to get even more clarity on, like don't feel like you're alone in this. Patrick and I are here to help in any way that we can. Always here to support you guys. So leave a comment, message us, whatever you need to do to get support. We are here for you. But yeah, this is all I have for tonight. I appreciate you guys so much. And yeah, before you head out, definitely leave a comment and let me know what your biggest aha moment was. What was the biggest takeaway for you from today's training? But yeah, that's all I have. I appreciate you guys so much.